Hey everybody. All right. So if you are one of my regular viewers, keep watching from here. If you're not one of my regular viewers and you just popped in for this review for the first time, feel free to skip ahead about a minute or so. Uh, the reason why is I want to apologize to my regular viewers. I usually try and record 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time with my videos, which I had done going into February. Then I got really sick the second week of February and didn't record anything because I got really sick. Started to feel better, started recording some album reviews. I hated the way my voice sounds. I don't like the way my voice sounds right now either because I'm coming back from being sick, but it's not horrible, so I'm dealing with it. My apologies. But then I got sick. I just started getting better over the course of the week, and I got really sick again. And then after getting really sick, this would okay. So first week of February, where the hell are we? Okay, somewhere in the middle of February, I got sick. Then the week after that, I started getting better. Then I got sick again. Then thankfully, I started feeling better just in time to go and do karaoke for my daughter's birthday. And then I ended up with a sinus infection. That was a holdover from getting sick. So I am not doing so great over the course of February going into March, which is why there were no postings at all last week. Okay, this took a little over a minute for anybody that didn't skip. My apologies. Now, the bright side is getting sick worked out for everybody because it allows me. I had recorded some reviews. I really hated the way I sounded in them. I did a bunch of Frank Zappa, some Weezer, which they'll be coming back up, but I'll be re-recording them. But because of my getting sick and everything else like that, it's allowing me to do the new Rob Zombie album, The Great Satan. Okay. Let me start by saying if this was my first Rob Zombie album and I had never heard a Rob Zombie album or a White Zombie album prior to this, okay? So if I'm like some 14-year-old kid right now when this, as this album just got released, never heard anything else, I didn't have parents that raised me on other Rob Zombie because my kids would say that. So never had any exposure, and I picked this one up for the first time. That's a pretty decent album. But that's not the situation. The reality is there's two major release White Zombie albums before this, and I don't even remember how many Rob Zombie albums. But we're not going to talk about all the Rob Zombie albums. What I will really want to mention is this album, right off the bat. This album sounds like every song off this album, with the exception of like one, maybe two, sounds like it's either off Astro Creep, The Sexorcisto, Hellbilly Deluxe, the first one, or Sinister Urge. Really had to think about that one. Didn't have that written down in my notes. There's one or two other songs in here. Sounds like they could be from out of that. But a lot of this, to me, having, listen, like everything I said, to me, a lot of this just sounds like basic Rob. So if you're a Rob Zombie fan, you're not going to dislike this album. I just don't think there's too much new on this album. And the sound on this album, there's a reason for the sound. The band on this album is the band that made the first Hellbilly Deluxe album. With the exception of the drummer. Ginger Fish, famous from Marilyn Manson, is the drummer on here. It's Riggs and Blasco on guitar and bass. And it has that sound to it, and I can see why people, after listening to this album, ask, what are the chances of a White Zombie reunion? It's never going to happen, folks. The dude does not want to go out on tour with his ex, okay? Very few musicians do want to go out on tour with their exes. It usually doesn't work out well for the band. Fleetwood Mac gave it a really good run when they got back together, but look at how many years they were separated first, okay? I don't see Sean Yeltsin and Rob Zombie getting back on stage together. I just don't. I think it's way too long past. Um, you can tell that it's not John Five on this album. That's a given. But that goes in part, not entirely, but in part that goes with that. The songs just have a different vibe to them. Like I said, they sound more like the first couple solo albums or prior to. Let me get into the songs. All right. Okay. So I actually wrote myself some notes here. Okay. So we got FTW 84, the World 1984. It's a solid start for the album, but it's a very basic Rob Zombie kind of song. Right away, this makes me go White Zombie. It really did have a White Zombie kind of vibe to it. That's followed up by Tarantula, which to me also sounds very White Zombie, early Rob solo kind of stuff. Then you hit I'm a Rock and Roller. Now, FTW 84 and I'm a Rock and Roller, I saw singles first. There's quite a few singles online. I think about half the album Rob did videos for, which is kind of nice. I'm a Rock and Roller. I do enjoy this one, but it feels like it could have been just a little bit more. You know that Stone Sour song, Looking Through the Glass? I feels like forever. And ever so, yeah, okay. So I don't know the name of the song. I'm sorry. I'm not a Stone Sour person. But you know that song kind of like has this really good kind of build up, and it builds up and it builds up, but it never really, even at the end of the song when it kind of goes into its build, it doesn't never really truly feels like it takes off. Like it feels like the song stops before it takes off. And that's kind of how I feel about this one. You know, there's just one little piece that felt like it was missing. I think it was in the choruses. I think there was just a little bit in the chorus missing to make it just kind of fly a little bit more. But at the same time, I also feel like kind of what helps shape the song. It's interesting. Heathen Days. All right, so my notes on here is this one belongs in a heavy action sequence. Very classic White Zombie to me that way. And movie I love called Airheads. White Zombie appears in the movie during a sequence, and just in the bar kind of thing. And I do not remember the name of the song that White Zombie's doing. I've had a couple people tell me it never quite sticks. I really should go pick up the soundtrack. I gotta find the soundtrack for that movie. Heathen Days, though, this reminds me very much of the song that's kind of playing in that sequence. It's just, it belongs right. But it would be at home in like, you know, it would not be at home in Bruce Campbell's Evil Dead because that's classic rock. But in the remakes of Evil Dead, it would totally make sense, you know, when that first time the chainsaw comes out and they're going around just gore cutting. Heathen Days, man. Heathen Days. Then you got Who Am I, which is just a soundscape, typical Rob's kind of soundscape. Interestingly, there's only two on here, and I'm used to having a little bit more than that. But the second one, which we'll get to, really kind of makes up for there only being two. Black Rat Coffin. This is classic Zombie. This is a big time album. This is the type of song where, you know, you when you put on the album, you're putting it on because you know that song's gonna come on. It's not one that you'll probably ever really hear on the radio, I don't think, or whatnot. But it's one of those ones that when it drops on the album, it's gonna be like, yeah. Okay, so this one's probably my favorite on the album. It's probably the most different of all the songs on the album. Sir Lord Acid Wolfman. This one is really fun and funky with the music. The first song on the album that really doesn't make me think of any other Rob Zombie song. The closest it gets, and it's not right, and it's just because it's got kind of a nice mellowed out kind of groove to it, but a little bit of funk on it and whatnot. A lot of atmosphere going on. So House of a Thousand Corpses or Devil's Rejects, would be the closest I could say with this. And that's not even right. This is a whole separate thing on its own, and I really, really dig this song, man. Like, once again, probably my favorite song on the album. And if I were to put together like a Rob Zombie, top 10, this would make that top 10. I think so. And if it didn't make the top 10, that's because one of the albums stole an extra place or something like that. House of Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects right there. That'd be 3 songs in the top 10. All right, moving on. Punks and Demons, Satan and Metal. Okay, that describes this song perfectly. Satan and metal, and that's all you need to know, folks. The Devil Man. I really dig the intro on this one. Feels like something from. It's got kind of like this horror sci-fi kind of vibe to it, a fun horror sci-fi kind of vibe, like the Munsters, the Addams Family. Not to say that this is something that came out from his time working on the Munsters, and we're not going to talk about that. Should have just been in black and white. But the Munsters, Addams Family, X-Files. It's got the horror sci-fi kind of element, but fun kind of. I don't care what anybody says, that X-Files theme is fun. Just fun. And then after that, it only does that sadly for about like 15 seconds, 20 seconds, like the first little bit of the song. And then it slips into a basic slow stomp groove rocker. So think like kind of Pantera's Walk, where you just go boom, boom, boom. But no, I don't want to say groove metal though. It's not groove metal. This is more of a rocker, Then we're on to Out of Sight. This is a genuinely solid tune. I think Out of Sight, if anything, suffers just from track placement within the album. I think if it was in a different spot in the album, it would pop out a lot more than it does. But with where it's placed in the album, it doesn't pop out enough because it's been too much kind of in around the same tempo, same vibe-ish kind of feel. And it's got too many kind of stompers around it. Out of Sight's not really a stomper, so it gets stomped on, I guess, yeah. Then we're on Revolution, mother. This is solid standard Rob Zombie kind of tune. This is where I made the decision on this album. I think I said this at the very beginning. If this had been my first Rob Zombie album, my whole perspective on this album would be completely different. The thing is this isn't my first Rob Zombie album. So I hope there are a bunch of young kids that catch this review, have never listened to Rob Zombie in your life, and you go and you buy this album, never listen to Rob Zombie in your life, so you enjoy this album more than I do. Because realistically, I mean, that's where I would be on. Okay, so there's a lot of kids I know and I met through the years where they will say that when it comes to Metallica, Saint Anger is actually one of their favorite albums. And you look at it, you give them that little look, and they, that why they're like, it was my first Metallica album. It was the one that introduced me to the band. So they have a true, genuine love for Saint Anger. And I really think that, I know that old Zombie fans will enjoy this album. I know this for a fact, and I'll get into that at the end. All right, let me go whack on with the track listing. All right, welcome to Age of Electric. This is another soundscape. This one actually kind of has a bit of a message to it. There's an actual kind of speech going on along through it and whatnot. Something I don't recall Rob ever really doing on previous albums, where it really kind of feels like he's really telling people to just try to enjoy life a little more, man. Like try and, don't, as much as the world is heading back towards war, we don't have to go there. It's kind of what I took from it. I found it very enjoyable. Most of Rob's soundscapes, this is one of the few I very, very much enjoyed. The Black Scorpion, this one has a fun circus organ-like vibe going through it at different points, which was really kind of cool. And it's mixed in with a standard 4 on the floor, a fast 4 on the floor. And I kind of really dug it. I thought it was a really fun kind of tune. That's what it was. It was a fun kind of tune. Unclean Animals, slow rocker. Okay, so on this particular track, this album is drenched in Rob doing the heavy compression phase flangey thing on his voice. And on this particular song, I really wish he would have gone to more of his closer to his natural voice and sang it, in a quieter kind of flavor and given it a Nick Cave kind of vibe, because the music's already doing that. And I really think if Rob had just gone natural with the vocals, I think it would have been really cool. Really would have set this song apart from other songs and really would have made Unclean Animals even better than it is. I think it was an opportunity that he missed out on. And then the album finishes with Grave Discontent, which was pretty basic Rob Zombie song. Okay, so I do know that classic Rob Zombie fans will very much enjoy this album. And how do I know that? Because I sat down and listened to this album with classic Rob Zombie fans. I bought it actually the Saturday right before this is going up. Brought it home, put it on the car radio while me and my buddy Pat were out driving around, listening to it. Got home, threw it in the CD player so Tracy could listen to it. So we gave it another go. And it was, like everybody was enjoying it. I was being the most critical of it, but that's because that's what I do. But everybody else right into the album, it was like a really good, solid Rob Zombie album. And that's what it is. It's a really good, solid Rob Zombie album. You're not wasting your money going out and buying it if you like Rob Zombie. It's just, there's very little different, very little exploratory. That's the way I would put it. And I really liked how Rob was going off, and there was a lot more exploration from album to album. And I was hoping maybe with John 5 leaving, this would have felt a little different, a little more exploratory. But it didn't. It felt like it was more of a throwback. And it's funny because Rob had mentioned that he was contemplating leaving music altogether, focusing just on movies before he hooked up and started working with John 5. And that revitalized him and got him going again and whatnot. And this album, well, once again, a very solid album. It didn't get revitalization that going to working with another group should have provided, I think. So for me, it was kind of a throw off that way. I don't know. Maybe I'm being way too hard. But once again, like I said, man, I want kids to go out and buy this album. This is an album I guarantee kids are going to love, man. If this album had come out instead of Hellbilly Deluxe, nah, there's no Dracula on here. There is no Dracula on here. But it would have done at least as good as Sinister Urge. If this had come out instead of Sinister Urge, long as, important Devil's Rejects was left on there. Was that Devil's Rejects on that one, or is that House of Thousand Corpses on that one? Either way. To me, those songs are very important songs, as I've clearly mentioned. So long as, but this album honestly could easily replace Le Sexorcisto or Astro Creep as far as I'm concerned. Maybe Astro Creep. There's no Thunder Kiss or Black Sunshine on here either. That's the problem with this album. There's a lot of really good tunes on here, but there is that one definitive where, you go, oh yeah, that's gotta be, Dragula. There's no Dragula on here. There's no I Feel So Numb on here. There's no House of a Thousand Corpses. There's no, like Sir Lord Acid and Wolfman gets close. Sorry. Gets close, but not quite there. All right, I'm done. I'm coughing. Talking too much. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Like button, subscribe button, bell for notifications, please, and thank you. Check out a couple links. Peace, love, take care.